Welcome to For Mannerless Women. I am your host, Adelle Onyango, and this is a space that is committed to nurturing a new generation of shame-free women. This is a very special bonus season. I decided, I have so many African women who are on my faves list. Why not share them with you? So over the next 6 weeks, we're going to journey through Zimbabwe, South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Somalia, talking about different conversations with incredible women who I appreciate, who inspire me, and trust me, by the end of our special little trip, you are going to have more clarity on how to define your womanhood for yourself. All right, let's jump into episode number 1. We are starting off in Ghana, which is so exciting because the particular guest is someone whose book I have read 4 times. She's a writer, activist, and author, Nana Darkoa Sekyiamah. Her work has transformed conversations around sex, pleasure, freedom, and womanhood across Africa. And today we're going to unpack the many ways we've been taught to fear sex, the many ways pleasure is very political for women, how your body image shapes your relationship with intimacy, and so much more. If you've ever felt shame around your desires, questioned the rules you've inherited about womanhood, struggled to feel at home in your body, or wondered what freedom would look like if you gave yourself permission to define it on your own terms, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. I am super excited to have you, Nana, on For Mannerless Women because I feel like you embody the ethos of the show. So first and foremost, thank you for making time to be here with us.
Thank you, Adele. It's a delight to be here with you.
Number one, I think I've said this to you on Instagram, but your book, The Sex Lives of African Women, I am on my 4th read.
Amazing.
I'm on my 4th read. I feel like it's very liberating. And I've started your 2nd book as well, which is so interesting, just diving into African culture as far as like the different stages of womanhood and pleasure are concerned. So thank you for the work. But let's go to the very beginning. When did it occur to you, or when did you realize that pleasure wasn't something that you as an African woman had been taught to really place importance on or to prioritize? Or was that the case at all for you?
It wasn't the case for me. Nobody told me anything positive about sex growing up. Sex was always presented as this thing that only bad girls did, when I was young. It was also presented as this act that would result in your life being destroyed. So I write in my book, Seeking Sexual Freedom, about this really popular soap that used to show every Sunday on TV in Ghana. And the storyline would inevitably go something like this. There'll be a young teenage girl who was very stubborn. She'll start running around with a boy from the neighborhood. She will fall pregnant. And then she would have to give up on her education and stay at home and look after her child, but then wouldn't be supported by anybody and would be miserable. And always at that point in time, my mom would turn to me and say, see, this is what happens when you mess around with boys. So I was truly terrified of messing around with boys, even though I don't think I even sort of fully understood what that meant. And at the same time, there were these pivotal experiences that happened in secondary school. I remember all the gossip about one of our classmates who dropped out of school for a period, and the story was she had fallen pregnant, and we were in a boarding school. I went to the Catholic boarding school, and then she came back like, I don't know, 2 terms later. I guess she had had a child, but people gossiped about her so much that she had to drop out of school. So there was that. There were always the rumors about the girls who were believed to be sexually active. People would call them names like Kaneshi mattress. So Kaneshi is a neighborhood. It's like calling somebody Lavington mattress or, Clemani mattress. The implication being everybody in that neighborhood has slept on her. So this was basically the kind of, I guess, culture in which I grew up, and this is how sex was presented to me. So it was always presented as something negative, you know? And it wasn't until like just before my 23rd birthday that I actually had consensual sex with a man for the first time. And that ended up being a relationship I stayed in until like just before I turned 30. And then, I divorced my then husband. And that really began my 30s and my period of exploration, which is also the period where I started blogging about sex and sexuality.
Nana, this is so crazy because I'm all the way in Kenya and I'm identifying with every single step of your journey because when I was in IB, so like pre-university, we had the same experience of we
I went
had
to Ivy too. I also did the baccalaureate.
what?
Yes.
This is crazy. And so there was a girl in the year ahead of me who got pregnant. And the
Mm.
boy, the father of the child, had just cleared IB. And what the school did was they paraded this girl, like she was giving talks to all of us other female students, telling us how we shouldn't be like her, basically, the mistake she's made. And I remember, I think I was about 15. I remember being so confused because I was like, okay, if we're going to demonize this pregnancy and sex thing, where is the guy? Shouldn't he also be paraded and giving us talks?
Wow. Oh my God, the trauma that poor girl had to go through. And I feel like that's the kind of stuff that impacts you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, because those are your formative years. And we just kind of were, I think after that, we kept being shown these videos that were so scary of STIs and how disgusting they look. And it was just about fear. The same thing you're talking about.
Yeah,
It was just about
yeah.
fear. And then you get to an age where then everybody's asking you, so when are you going to have a child? And it's like, but
Exactly. There's no transition. There's no transition. There's no education.
yeah.
There's no, like if you're lucky, you get the basics of biology, but
Mm.
then like sex itself is always presented from this fear-filled lens. And then suddenly you're expected to get married, of course, to a person of the opposite gender, you know, and then you're expected to pop out bodies and babies, and nobody's even saying to you, well, sex can be something pleasurable, sex is something you're entitled to. This is how you learn to have sex, this is how you figure out your body. There's so much that's missing.
So true. And I love that you've brought in the body, because just like you, after my divorce, which was maybe 4, 5 years ago, I started to really get to understand my physical body and sit in it and begin to feel comfortable in it and come to the actualization that that is a huge step in me enjoying sex and discovering pleasure is to sit comfortably in my body. Was that the same for you? And do you feel like now you're sitting comfortably in your body?
Honestly, I wish I could say I'm sitting comfortably in my body. I feel like there are different moments in my life where I'm more at home in my body, but I recognize that like a lot of women, I do think I have a fair amount of body dysmorphia. For example, I've always felt very self-conscious about my belly. I've always felt like my belly is disproportionately larger than the rest of my body, right? Like just in terms of proportions,
Yeah, yeah.
and even in seeking sexual freedom. I write about how a friend of mine was teasing me for having a size 12 body and a size 14 stomach, you know? So my belly is the one part of my body that I have never ever liked.
Mm,
And honestly, I still do not like,
mm,
and I almost feel like it's the most unfeminist thing about me that I still want to, like modify my body and have a flat stomach or a flatter stomach because I recognize that, this view doesn't come from nowhere, right? It comes
mm.
from what we are fed through magazines, televisions. And I feel like even when you're conscious about some of these things, the consciousness helps, but it doesn't mean you're less susceptible to the influence. Okay, I think you are less susceptible to the influence, but you're not totally susceptible to the
Yes.
influence, you know? And so I feel like I kind of like joke to myself that this is the most unfeminist thing about me that, if at some point in time, if I get like to a certain scale, a certain weight on the scale, I will go on a diet. I've been on so many fucking diets in my life. I am so fucking tired of being on a diet. I have tried it all. I've done Weight Watchers, I've done Atkins, I've been on the Noom app, I've had personal weight coaches, and I'm like, this is so unhealthy,
Yeah.
But for me, one of the things I've also been doing is because the thing about me is if I don't understand something, I like to read about it, I like to research, I like to figure it out. And one of the realizations I've come to as part of our body dysmorphia as a society, right? It's like an ill that's being given to us by capitalism, so they
Mm,
can sell us solutions to those ills, right? And the challenge is we've gone away from our indigenous ways of eating. If you look at
mm,
how Africans ate, the foods that we ate and the labor that we did, like we were much healthier. But now, because of the food industrial complex, so many of us are eating ultra processed foods, which have really been designed to make us addicted,
yeah.
which are not good for our bodies, which we react to, which we feel bloated to. So that's like a subject that I'm super interested in now and exploring because it's like me trying to heal my body, right? And the body obviously links to your confidence in yourself. It links to feeling at home, which is really a key part to being sexually free.
That's so true. I recently wrote about it because I think there was first we didn't grow up outside of patriarchy, right? So we've internalized a lot of it and for years, and it's going to take a while for us to kind of like comb through. But I was talking about like how it's interesting on one hand when we talk of plastic surgery, a lot of the procedures that women go for that are most popular are in line with what we were socialized to think men find attractive in women. Um, but
Absolutely.
also, I was like, because I want autonomy for women, I can't make the blanket statement that all of you are getting all of these procedures so that you can be desirable to men. I also have to think that you have autonomy over your body. And so it's like, it's such a gray area and you just have to sit in it. For a long time, I used to think my breasts were too small. And I always thought, man, if I just didn't fear surgery as much as I do, I would definitely move a size up. And then I got into a phase where I was just like, no, I think I'm good. So it's kind of like a gray area, but I wonder like your feelings around your body and your stomach, do they follow you into your sexual life or sexual experiences? Like do those insecurities pop up?
Not so much anymore. I feel like, when I was much younger, I was more self-conscious about my body. And I think that's the great thing about growing older, right? Like
Mhm.
you can have your rational mind take over. I now know that, if somebody's into you, they are into you. Like
Mm,
your flaws or what you perceive as your flaws, a lot of it is really your perception. The person who is into you sexually is into you. Like I don't think they really care about what you consider your flaw. They don't see it as a flaw. Sometimes they see it as cute, right?
yeah.
And so I think also if you find you're in a sexual relationship with somebody who is not appreciating your body, that just tells you that you need to leave, you need to exit that situation. And then I think, like do things that make you feel good about your body. Like if you're self-conscious like me about your stomach, maybe wear like a cute see-through something and make that part of the act. So I
Mhm.
feel like now I have way more tools to be comfortable in bed. And if I make the choice to be in bed with somebody, I'm going to have fun because otherwise, why are we here?
Exactly, exactly. I love that you brought in the element of fun because in my 30s is when I started to acknowledge that one thing that I want my sexual experiences to be is fun as well. Like there can be laughter, there can be fun, it can be expansive. And for me, why that was important is because my first sexual experience when I was 18 was sexual trauma. And so most of my 20s was trying to like heal and rewrite and not be scared of men first and foremost. And so what are other ways, like if we sit in this space of making a sexual experience fun and flirty, How did you get comfortable with that?
For me, really, it's about practice, you
Mm.
know? It's like pushing yourself to do the thing, to say the things that make you feel comfortable, to have the conversations ahead of the sexual experience, to get out of your head. And the more you do it, the better you become, right?
Mm.
Because I'm sure a lot of women can identify with being so much in their head during a sexual experience. Like your body is there, but there's so much going on in your head, you're not fully present, right? And the thing for me that I have found really, really helpful is basically to chat about whatever is going to be in my head before we actually have sex, right? To send a WhatsApp, to ask certain questions, to make certain agreements. So we're both very clear what we're signing up for. You know, whether it's a conversation about, hey, when was the last time you got tested? You know, can you show me your results? Can I show you my results? Can we go get tested together? You know, some of the things that would pull me away from a sexual experience in the moment, having the conversation beforehand, even if it's to ask, hey, do you want to hook up? Right. So that like I'm not like questioning, is this person into me or not into me? And in the moment, like, you know, we kind of feel the chemistry and go for it. I guess maybe I'm just like a planner. I like to plan everything, including sex. You know, I want to know that we are going to have sex. And then the conversations are awkward to have in person. I've had it over chats with you and it's done and dusted. And then I can be fully present.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, especially on like practice makes comforts. The more you do it,
Mhm.
the more you know even what you like and what feels good and what is like
Yeah.
uncomfortable. So practice makes comfort, right? After my divorce, just like you, I started really taking my pleasure seriously. In fact, now I always use the phrase, I'm very committed to my pleasure. It's very important to me. And your book, The Sex Lives of African Women, when I first read it, I thought I was at the peak of trying different things as far as sex is concerned. And when I first read it, I almost had to get a notebook to write all the many things I still have to try. I was like, oh
I
my God,
love it.
I am sleeping on the job because there's so much more to try. And so that's just like the impact just that one body of work had on me. But of course, you've had your podcast, you've had your blog, you've had these books you've written. What impact have the stories of these African women that you've collected and recorded? What impact have they had on your sexual liberation?
Mm. I think what they've given me is a real sense of freedom and a real sense of possibilities for the future. You know, so in sex lives, my favorite interviews were the ones I did with the older woman. You know, I interviewed a woman who was 71 who told me about falling in love with her partner in their 60s. You know, I also interviewed a 60-year-old woman who was poly and was telling me how, like, you know, still enjoyable sex was for her. And it's given me a lot of comfort because I'm approaching 50, I'm 48, right? And I feel like generally the media portrays sexuality as something that only young women experience and men, right? And so speaking to older women, telling me how enjoyable their sex life was really freeing. It takes away the pressure. It takes away from that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time, you know?
Mm.
Like I feel like time is endless in terms of both continuing to discover my sexuality because I think, you know, sexuality is not static. I think it's dynamic. It changes and evolves. And so that's what it makes me feel like, oh, there are all of these possibilities, right? Like, in fact, there's nothing wrong with sleeping on the job right now, Adele, to use your language, because you have all that time ahead of you. You're not
Mm.
suddenly going to run out of juice or power, you know?
Yeah, this is so true. Actually, some of the stories that I enjoyed in your book were
Yeah.
when it was older women, because yeah, it challenges that stereotype or that fake truth that has been propagated. Like you have a shelf life that ends at 40 or even at 30 for some spaces, right? And after that,
True.
you shouldn't be enjoying sex. You should just
Mhm.
life should be boring.
Exactly. You know, you're an older woman, you should be taking care of your grandchildren. And fair enough if you want to take care of your grandchildren, but trust me, you can still have a vibrant sexual life.
Did writing, especially The Sex Life of African Women and your latest book, did they change how you show up in relationships?
I think for me, like this process of research and writing just affirms to me how important freedom is, how important it is for a woman to be independent, to be autonomous, to have a supportive collective and community around her. You know, it means for me that relationships do not have to, like, I don't design my life around relationships, right? I'm single. I'm very, very happily single. But I don't feel like I lack anything. And I also feel like if I want to be in a sexual relationship with somebody, I can be in a sexual relationship at any point in time, right?
Right.
And I think for me, that's also what the writing does for me. Like, it affirms that I can create the life I want to live. And I am living the life I have created.
Mm. For the woman who's listening, like your most recent book, Seeking Sexual Freedom, after going through those paces, the research and it's extensive research that went into that from different African communities, where do you think is a good place for an African woman who's seeking sexual freedom to begin?
I think you always begin with the self,
Mm.
you know, and you always begin, I think, by taking some space and time to reflect on what you wish to learn, what you wish to unlearn, what you wish to experiment with, and you figure out how you can do so as safely as possible, you
Mm.
know? So for me, that's the first step. Take some time to reflect. You know, if you can project yourself into the future, ask yourself, if I am to be sexually free in 5 years' time, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would I experience? What does sexual freedom mean to me personally? You know, how would I know that I'm sexually free? Is there anything I would hear differently? Is there anybody who would be in my life? Is there a particular permutation of people who'd be in my life? You know, so really try and build that picture of what sexual freedom for you would be like. So it's almost like you create the vision and then you go back and you figure out how you get there. I like to think of it like there's this sort of tree exercise I like to do. So if you imagine a tree, you know, tree has roots, it's in the earth, it goes all the way up. There are leaves at the top and there are fruits. You can think of the fruits as sexual freedom, right? And
Mm.
if you've built your perfect image of what that will be like, now you need to go back to the roots. What do you need to like bind you, right? What's the sort of support you need to help you climb up the tree? And that's for me your path to sexual freedom. And it's obviously very, very individual, right? So what my path looks like will be different from yours, Adele. But this is also why the second half of Seeking Sexual Freedom the second half of Seeking Sexual Freedom has many, many different exercises that people can do either by themselves or with a partner or in community to also figure out for themselves because there are so many roadmaps and I wanted to share as many of them as possible because I wanted to give people like practical tools and tips without prescribing like one particular path because I think there are multiple paths to sexual freedom.
Yeah, and your path can even evolve. Like you're saying, I'm 37. Who knows what, sexual freedom is going to look like for me in 5 years and 10 years.
Exactly.
It can evolve and change. I love that. When you talk about matters, sex, sexuality, pleasure as an African woman, as you said at the very beginning, the young girl who was kind of being described as this mattress, the tag that comes with that is that you are a bad woman, and
Mhm.
you're shameless. And it's almost why I even created the show because I realized, you know what? How you get liberated is to actually lean into being mannerless. What society is labeling as being a mannerless woman looks pretty attractive and liberating to me. And so when we talk about this mythical creature of the good African woman, there is a tension between being socially acceptable, which means don't talk about sex, don't show that you know too much, and also being fully expressive. Did you wrestle with that, or were you always from a young age very forward about your thoughts, even when it came to things that were not sexual or sex related?
Yeah, I was pretty fearless as a child. I've always been somebody who spoke her mind, who challenged authority, who like resisted in different ways. I wasn't talking about sex growing up, really didn't start talking about sex until I turned 30. But I would complain about anything that I felt was unfair, about a teacher hitting us in class, or refuse to go into the kitchen to help my mom, because I'm like, I'm reading a book. I can't come help in the kitchen. So I was just really stubborn as a child, So in that sense, I haven't changed much.
And did you have to unlearn what you were taught is being a good woman in order for you to access your pleasure? What did you
Oh
have to
yeah,
unlearn?
absolutely. Oh gosh, everything, right? Because I would say in my 20s, I basically conformed. I married the first man I had consensual sex with and was in a relationship with him for many years until I was like, wait, what does this mean? Am I not going to sleep with anybody else for the rest of my life? And the answer was yeah, I don't want to be you know, like I don't want to have one sexual partner for the rest of my life, which is basically what I'd been told I needed to do as a good girl. And
Mm.
that meant leaving the relationship and then also giving myself space and time to explore. And, in quotes, sow my wild oats, which is something I had always had men being encouraged to do, but women not being encouraged to do. And that meant going against everything I had been taught, right? Like we're not taught to sow our wild oats. We are taught the opposites, that we are bad women if we have multiple sexual partners, if we're not in committed relationships. And so I made the intention to be a bad girl. Like it was a deliberate choice because I had now realized that all the things I had been told about, Carnation mattresses, like first of all, men will gossip about you regardless of what you do. There were people claiming to have had sex with me when I was still um sexually inactive, so
Yeah.
I realized that in a sense being a good girl did not protect me from being gossiped about, and so I was just like, let me just really do my own thing and then really not care what people say about me, and that was like a huge change in my life.
Oh, I love this so much because I was telling one of my girlfriends that what I had to unlearn is that every sexual partner had to be rounded off to a relationship. And sometimes a sexual partner is just that. Like we just had fun. We don't have to be together.
Exactly. Nope, not at all. We're just here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly. So your recent book, I just got my copy and I'm reading it. I'm in the chapter where you're talking about the Senges in Uganda, and it's just so interesting. It's so interesting, and I'm trying not to like read ahead of the chapters, but because I'm just like, oh, I wonder what else is coming. But I think what I love is that you're combing through pleasure from the lens of African traditions, right? And
Mhm.
maybe we can spend time unpacking the myth that pleasure is un-African.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, that was what was also really interesting about this process of research, because I felt like most of us as Africans have gone away from those communal spaces which allowed for a transfer of knowledge from mothers and grandmothers to young girls, where girls were taught about their bodies. And I believe in many, many cases also talk about how to have pleasurable sex, right?
Mm.
The challenge, of course, is it was like really focused on giving men pleasure. But then sometimes women will also be told, oh, and in that process, you please yourself. And in that process, this is how you also please yourself, right? It was really centered around the guy. But there was space for girls to learn about sex, space that really has shrunk, you know, um, or even where it exists has really changed, has become more conservative, really become influenced by Abrahamic religious beliefs, so are no longer how what they used to be. And I feel like we need to look back at some of these rites and rituals and think, how can we modernize them, right? How can we apply a feminist lens to them such that they center pleasure, they center an intergenerational transfer of knowledge, And it's done in ways that are safe and not harmful, you know?
What it reminded me of, even just reading the book, my grandmother, when I was maybe like just getting to my 20s, right before, I used to wear, and I still wear, a lot of crop tops. I love them. And whenever she
Mm.
was visiting us and I would be wearing a tiny crop top or like a bralette, she would say the most out of pocket things to me, like, oh, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's going to make the men find you irresistible. And I would just be like, oh my
That
goodness,
is
shut
hilarious.
your mouth. And I remember once telling my mom, I'm like, because in my language, I'm Luo. So grandmother is
Uh-huh.
Dana, right? Which means my grandmother. And I would tell my mom, I'm like,
Okay.
Dana might be, losing it a bit because she was telling me this, and how this is how I'm going to attract men. And she's like almost cheering me on as I'm walking out of the house with like my stomach out. And my mom said, oh no, she's not losing it. That's what traditionally she would be doing. She would be the person who would sneak you out of the house without my mom knowing so that I could go and sleep with my boyfriend. She would tell me about safe sex. She would tell me about how to dress in a way that aroused men, right? And
Oh, I love it.
I was like, oh my God, I thought this lady was going bonkers.
Amazing. And these are the stories that I love to hear. These are the stories we have to gather and write down and document like we're doing in this podcast right here. Because people have this perception of like African tradition as repressive, as, like anti-sex. But actually, when you hear these stories from especially the older women, right, those who existed like pre sort of independence, like contemporary independence,
Yeah.
you just realize how much more space there was for exploration, than there is today. I love the story. Thank you for sharing it, Adele.
You are welcome. Like your book just reminded me of that. I want us to dive into definitions of pleasure. I had a conversation a couple of seasons ago of this show with a guest, Abigail Arunga. I don't know if you know her.
Oh, I know Abigail very well. Yes, she's a friend.
We were talking about sex and protests and freedom, right? So even like pushing for better governance. She said sexual liberation and pleasure is at the core of that. And we were talking about definitions of pleasure. And she said, let's start it off with just what feels good for you. And I said, oh my God, for me, it's when I am putting on, I have eczema, so I really have to use shea butter. And when I'm putting on the shea butter on my body, and because I live in a cold area, it's hard. So I have to really rub the thing in. I said, damn, that's one of my favorite things. It feels so good to touch my body like that. And I wonder, Nana, what is your definition of pleasure from a personal lens?
It's so funny, Adele, because as you were speaking, I know you actually haven't gotten to that section of the book yet. But a couple of things that you said actually resonates with some of what other people told me.
Hmm.
So there's a woman I named Hawa in the book from Senegal who spoke about how when she was young, she would watch one of her aunts who would spend ages just lavishing shea butter on her body. She would just spend so much time like creaming every nook and cranny. And now she recognizes that as pleasure, you know? And I
Wow.
was just like, exactly. I was just like, oh, wow. Because pleasure starts with the art of touch.
Mm,
It starts with the art of learning how to touch yourself lovingly. And I feel like, a lot of sex educators say to people, oh, you need to learn to self-pleasure, you need to learn to masturbate. For people who have been told their whole lives that masturbation is a sin, for example, that's like a really hard first step,
mm,
you know? And then having that conversation with Hawa, I realized that actually the first step should be learning how to just, you know, vibration in every part of your body. Like
mm.
just a non-sexual touch, but just to enjoy that non-sexual touch and just to take your time and just to delight in it and just to be aware of the sensation of like the weight of your hand on the other hand and just sort of tap into your body, and I feel like that's a core part of pleasure and that art of touch. I mean, for myself, one of the things I really learned through this journey is just how much I love sensation play, different types of sensations. I wrote about an experience I had with a sensual masseuse, and she had this device. It's almost like she called it a tingler, but it's like a multi-pronged metal device, and she was kind of like just like running that over my body, and that felt so good. I bought two. I mean, unfortunately, since then I haven't like had anybody else use it on me, but I have it and I can use it on myself. And I realized, oh, I really like different types of sensation play. I also had a rope session with Tapiwa, and again, that felt really nice. So that's one of the things I've also discovered about myself in terms of pleasure and what feels good for me through this process of right and seeking sexual freedom.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture you posted about the rope session with Tapiwa, if I'm
Ah,
not
yes.
wrong.
So actually, what I posted was not a rope session with Tapiwa. It was a rope session I did with Dame Sadie. And I wanted to share it because that didn't make it into the book, but that was like really good. And we took some visuals. So I'm like, yeah, let me also, I have so much material that didn't make it into the book, which I plan to share through the Substack I started called the African Pleasure Fairy Godmother. So that's also another place to get more content around pleasure and living a more intentional life.
Nana, what does it mean to you as an African woman to reclaim pleasure on your own terms?
It means everything, right? It means acknowledging that pleasure is political and it's politically important for African women to take space and time for ourselves. We live in a world where we're expected to give, 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 to give to families, to give to our children, to give to husbands, to give to parents. But what does it mean when we actually pour into ourselves first, right? It
Mm.
means we too we deserve pleasure, we deserve to feel good, we deserve to be well. And I think that's an absolute priority, and fair enough if you're caring for others. Like I do a lot of caring work for my child, for, members of my family, but I make space and time for me. I always start the day by spending some time on me, and I protect that time.
Oh, I love that. I really do. It's how we pour back into ourselves, and it's about time we do that.
Absolutely. It's literally past time.
Yeah, yeah, actually, true. And another thing that I've started learning on my own journey when it comes to prioritizing pleasure and trying out new things and reading your book and being like, oh my goodness, I need to add more things to my list, right? Is also to let curiosity lead me and
Mm,
to not let fear lie to me that I've reached a stage of comfort, like to always just go back and really like comb through, because how we've been socialized can make you fear stepping out, not because something bad's gonna happen, but because you're in the back of your head, you're thinking, I'm going to be a bad woman, you know?
mm,
And
mhm.
and kind of like just keep on being curious and learning. And so I wonder for you, with the extensive experiences that you've had, and both in seeking your own personal pleasure, but in documenting all of these stories, what are you still learning about your own pleasure? What are you still curious about?
I'm curious to keep going,
Mm.
right? And I'm also curious to just keep listening to myself and tapping into what I'm feeling within my body. Um, and and yes, just listening to myself really, and just knowing I have all of the time. I'm not in a rush.
Mm.
Ironically, I feel like in the past year or two, I haven't been as sexual with other people as I would normally be. And in the past, that would have really like bothered me. Like in the past, if I went like 2 to 3 months without sex, I'd be like, oh my God, I need to find somebody to shag today. But now it doesn't bother me because I'm like in a season of my life where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not feeling it as much as I used to, and that's okay, right? And I feel like that's okay because I know I have all the time ahead of me. There's no rush.
Mm.
This is the season. This is how I'm feeling right now. When I want to change it, I will change it. Yeah.
So beautiful. As we're coming close to wrapping up, I am so intrigued by a new thing you have posted about, which is the Sexual Freedom Festival. Please tell
Yes.
me more about that coming up later this
Yes.
year.
Yes. Folks in Kenya may know that for the past 3 years, I've been collaborating with CARS, co-organizing the festival in Kenya, which we call Sexual Utopia. Before I came to Kenya and collaborated with CARS on this, we'd also run that festival in Ghana for 3 years called Adventures Live. And for me, the idea had always been for the festival to travel around the African continent, right? So we did Ghana, we did Kenya, all 3 years each. And super excited that we're moving to a Francophone country for the first time, moving to Benin. And now it's going to be called the Sexual Freedom Festival. And yes, it'll be happening at the end of November in Benin. I would love for folks in Kenya who have, been part of the festival there, or just like new people to come to Benin. It's a beautiful country with a rich history of African traditions. And the festival this year is making the links between, sexualities and African traditions, which is why we're going to Benin, because it's a country that is just so spiritually rich, where there's adherence to African traditional religions, particularly Voodoo. And yeah, we're organizing with Beninois activists and super excited. So yes, we actually have the sexual freedom handles on Instagram, so folks can follow that and learn more and how they can be involved.
Yeah, we're going to put links to everything Nana is working on, including the Sexual Freedom Festival, in the show notes. So you can definitely check that out. I think this is such a timely time for this festival to happen because these conversations are now reaching so many more women. It's not as hushed as it was a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
But to
Mhm.
the African woman who's listening and is curious, what what happens at a sexual freedom festival?
Oh, that's such a great question. Every year has been really, really different, right? But this year, because we have a focus on like traditional religions, we will have like a ceremony where we'll have voodoo priestesses bless the ground, give us permission to have the conversations. We'll have workshops, by different facilitators. Jet Set and Jasmine will be sharing some of the research she's done. Jet Set and Jasmine is an adult entertainer, a filmmaker, a therapist. We'll have workshops on asexuality and demisexuality. We'll have film screenings. We want it to be like a very sort of practical session. Actually, Abigail Arunga will be there. She will be leading a workshop as well. So we'll have some conversations on masculinities, led by Inshara and Kisa, who's actually Kenyan. Um, yeah, and it's happening in two languages, in English and French. Like, I am so excited about this festival. We've been working on it for like a year now. So can't wait for folks to come. And I hope Adele, you will make the trip.
Yes, I don't know if you saw, as soon as you posted it up, I followed I followed the page, I shared it with my girlfriend, and I was like, okay, we were planning to do Zimbabwe in December. What do you think about this?
I love it. I love it. We are also partnering with Aya Retreats. They're going to organize a retreat leading to the festival, and then folks coming to the retreat can also, come to the festival. So that's also another option. Like, because there's some folks who might want to have like a whole package, right? Get the chance to tour Benin and sort of end with the festival. So that's happening as well.
Nana, I already looked at that link. I know the itinerary for the retreat.
Love it.
And
Love it.
we're gonna put those links in the show notes. Please make sure you check them out. But as we wrap, Nana, this is just such a wonderful conversation. But I'm wondering, like, do you have a mannerless message that you want to leave for the African woman listening?
I would say live free and know that you can decide what freedom means to you. Live free.
It's so powerful because that's really the ethos of this show and this community is to have African women
Mm.
get the inspiration, expertise, spaces for them to define what womanhood looks like for them. It's not a one size fits all, but thank you so much for making the time to have this conversation with me and for the work that you're doing, Nana. Oh my goodness, you're freeing so many of us.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you for your work. Thank you for always amplifying mannerless women. And let's continue to be mannerless together.
What a yummy way to start the special bonus season of For Mannerless Women. So many gems to sit with from my conversation with Nana. What did you connect with? Let me know in the comment section wherever you are listening to this on. For me, I'm walking away from this conversation by giving myself the permission to ask, what does freedom mean to me as Adele? Now, if you would love to connect with Nana, I suggest you do. If you'd want to learn more about her books, her writing, read her Substack newsletter, The African Pleasure Fairy Godmother, or even attend the Sexual Freedom Festival happening in Benin later this year, all of those links are in the show notes. It's time for us African women to pour into each other. And one small step is just following the African women who are already doing incredible work. So make sure you follow Nana. And if this conversation resonated with you, please share it with all the mannerless or almost mannerless women in your life. And subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. We're going to be heading to South Africa.